The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, but early in the morning he arrived again in the temple area, and all the people started to come to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand in the middle. And they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" And they said to him, they said this to test him, so that they could have some charge to bring against him. So Jesus bent down and began to write on the ground with his finger. And when they continued asking him, he straightened up and he said to them, "Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And again, he bent down and wrote in the ground. And in response, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. So he was left alone with the woman before him. And when Jesus straightened up, he said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" And she replied, "No one, sir." Then Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore." The Gospel of the Lord. Has no one condemned you? No one, sir. I thought love was only true in fairy tales, meant for someone else, but not for me. Love was out to get me. That's the way it seemed. Disappointment haunted all my dreams. Then I saw her face, and now I'm a believer, not a trace, a doubt in my mind. I'm in love. I'm a believer. I couldn't leave her if I tried. Well, that old song is as old as I am, and the song itself is one that I think captures a sense of maybe some aspect of today's gospel. That song was recorded and became instantly a #1 hit by the Monkees back in, I think, 1966. Interestingly enough, the song was written by Neil Diamond, oddly enough. But in this particular song, there's a way in which, by coming to know each other, by that encounter, we can all of a sudden open up for ourselves, I think, what might seem to be a connection that allows us to say there's something more than just, you might say, rule or custom. That's certainly what's going on in today's gospel. There's a way in which these folks are trying to test Jesus by just using this woman. She's a prop, you might say, in their ploy with Jesus. And unfortunately, there's a system or a society that uses people as props, and in this case, especially women, unfortunately. Historically, we can go back and look at all kinds of systems where, of course, women had no rights. In the ancient world that Jesus lives in, women weren't even considered full persons according to some of the systems of philosophy at the time. But there's a way in which then all of a sudden, once you have that kind of thinking and those kinds of ideas, then you can start to use people in ways that we now would say is an affront to the full dignity of who they are. I really believe that currently in our own time, we Christians, we Catholics especially, need to really take stock in this idea of the Imago Dei, that we're all made in the image and likeness of God. Dei, D-E-I, this way in which of God, that we're of God. That's the accusative form of Deus, right? Dei, D-E-I. That we have a sense of belonging to each other because of that common humanity, being created in the image and likeness of the divine, the very divine. I really, really, really think there's so much out there in narratives that is obscuring that for us right now. And it really has me deeply concerned about our own faith and our own beliefs as Christians being deeply compromised. There's a young pastor I was talking with the other day, a man much more conservative than myself, coming from a much more conservative tradition, you might say, and he thinks we've now reached, especially in our current realm of talking about policy and talking about politics, he thinks we've reached in this country a level of idolatry. Well, that's not a word I use often. I don't really think in terms of idolatry. I think of that as something from the ancient world. But maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. He's got me thinking, certainly this Lenten season. But I do think today's gospel, as it falls here in this end of the Lenten journey for us, does make me say, am I seeing people for who they are and how they are? Am I willing to see people that I don't normally have in my life and let me know how I'm connected to them? This very basic church teaching, this concept and principle of solidarity, that we're all interconnected to each other and we're all interdependent. How is it that you and I, as Catholics at this time, especially in our Lenten journey, can really let that sink into us? And it might be that you and I are being offered a special grace to be able to think about that sense of belonging. How could you be against belonging? Belonging to one another, belonging to a community. You can't be Christian without community. Our Christian tradition wasn't created by Jesus of Nazareth to be an individual journey. Certainly we have our own individual spiritualities and we come to our own sense of personal belief in Jesus Christ. But it's not a solitary journey. It is by nature communal. It is by nature on mission, reaching out. And so there's a way in which maybe you and I need to be able to see each other's face and become believers in what we are and who we are and how we are. And so I think there's a way in which maybe we struggle with that. We're really struggling with that in some form or another. That old song by the Monkees has that whole idea that we come to encounter each other, and in that we can restore a sense of what love really is and the power of love in our midst. And there's a way in which today's gospel does that even better for you and for me, right? That we can all of a sudden restore a sense of belonging, even though we cross very different divides, even though we come from very different cultures, right? There's a great diversity in our world. And in that diversity, though, we can have a sense of belonging. Some of that comes from being able to make sure there aren't inequitable and unjust systems like that exist in today's gospel, where people can be just used as props, used horribly. You and I need to look through any system like that's maybe around us and be able to then focus on the idea that we belong to one another in this very old idea of a solidarity, that we're all part of a common good, another old teaching that's part of our tradition. And to say belonging is what we're about, coming to know and understand how we belong to one another. And like that old song says, and then we can see each other's face and become believers again, or restore and deepen what our belief is. In today's encounter, Jesus is willing to look at this crowd where they're ready to stone a woman to death for a mistake she made. Jesus is able to see her for who she is, not her mistake. And he's willing to step into that circle. He does it in a very quiet and non-controversial way, right? He just gets down and he asks them some provocative questions so that they all of a sudden can look at their own humanity and their own souls come and rise up and realize how wrong they are. In many ways, they're shamed. And they all peel off one by one until he and this woman are there, he seeing her face and she seeing his face. And they're both then believers that we can be more, we can be and belong to this reign of God's love that Jesus gave us, that Jesus empowers us to be a part of. So let our last weeks of Lent teach us how to belong, how to see her face and his face, their face, and become believers. Amen.